Hey everybody, welcome back to I invited you on because we are Dean M. Lloyd from Lloyd Consulting Co. And today I've invited Ben Pecotich on because I want to talk about difficult cooking. And I've totally stuffed
Not
up.
politic.
I practiced it for about 5 minutes beforehand. So anyway, Ben, can you tell us how you pronounce your name?
Oh, that's funny. So I'm Ben, and Ben's much easier than Ben Pecotich.
It's not phonetic.
um, yeah, it's a tricky one. I
Yeah.
struggle with it. And what do you want to know? Hi, I'm Ben.
Yeah, Ben. Okay, let's go then, Ben. So what was your first job? So I've invited you on because
My first job.
yeah, I've known Ben for a little bit now, and we've been introduced sort of in the social space. We'll get to what he does and how he does it. So yeah, straight into it, Ben. First job. What was your first job?
All right, I'll give a little bit of a tease of kind of
Go
where
for
things are at these days, but really focus on leadership, design, and innovation, and how we use those things to help create the conditions for happier communities. So a strong focus on regeneration, purpose, well-being, as it relates to leadership, design, and innovation. So that's a little teaser for maybe the end of the story, or still a work in progress, obviously.
Yeah.
But going all the way back to the first job, how far back do you want to go?
Very, very
All the way
first.
back?
First one you can remember. You got
So,
three, four, let's say.
well, okay, yep. So probably still the same one then. So my dad's is a brickie, so I grew up as a brickie, and my first job really started basically when I could walk and I could carry a brick, and I'd carry one brick at a time from the pallet out the front. So these are on residential jobs, not big commercial construction sites. So residential jobs, pallet of bricks would be dropped out the front, and I would grab one brick out the front and waddle out to the back where Dad was working and move them and build the brick stack there. So my first job was a brickies labourer, and I was doing that from, under the age of 2. Before I went to school when I was 5, I was laying bricks, but still my main job was being a brickies labourer. I only got to lay bricks once the labouring was done. And my grandfather was also a metal worker as well. So he had a big metalworking shed out the back of his place, which is where I actually lived for the first five years. And so I was also a metalworking labourer, getting blood blisters and with the pot rivet gun and trying to stay out of the way of the welder and that kind of thing. So very much grew up in the trades. And now my first jobs, my first paid job would have been actually getting paid by Dad, and to make sure I got paid. That these are back in the days of paper tax tables. So I'd look at my age and how many hours I'd done and work out what my hourly rate was and make sure Dad was paying me properly. So that was a way to start learning the business side of being a tradie as well, to make sure I was actually getting paid. And then there was sort of the usual jobs of things like being a paper boy, having a paper run, mowing lawns, getting paid for that. Next door neighbor had a beer tanker, and so I used to wash the outside of the beer tanker, not the inside. So
Can fit inside
that were
that.
the kinds of yeah. So there's lots of different sort of jobs, and work for me started extremely young and never stopped. And there was lots of other sort of smaller jobs in the mix there as well, but got taught, and I'm very grateful for having learnt from a very young age that when there's work to be done, you get into it and you don't whinge about it and you keep going until it's done. And if it's not done, you don't get to go home. So I got taught a very strong work ethic at a very young age, and I'm grateful for that because that's served me well through life.
Yeah, definitely stood you in good stead for where you are now. But I think that's one of the things that we did connect around. My dad was a bricklayer when I was younger, and the hardest job I've ever had as a brickish labourer. I remember tipping a
Yeah.
wheelbarrow of bricks over my uncle when he was down in the footings one day, and I just ran and ran and ran.
It's not fun being under bricks. I've got a few scars and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
from
Oh, he had bits of
bricks falling on my head and stuff.
shit
So
off me everywhere.
yeah, good fun.
Yeah.
Builds character.
I think I was 14 and I was trying to get a full barrow of bricks up a fence paling.
Narrow plank. Yep.
with mud like just like mud, like not
Slipping
mud.
around. Yep.
So yeah, it just slipped and it's just gone bang. Yeah,
Yep. That's all part of the fun.
yeah,
As
yeah,
long as you live to tell the tale, then it's all good.
yeah. And can you remember your first paycheck? Like I know when you were younger, but like sort of the first paycheck, and I'm going to spend it on something. What was that, and sort of equate it to like was it a packet of lollies? Was it a bike? Was it like where did
It
that land?
was it was definitely things like lollies and chewing gum and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
But even though I'd earned the money, it wasn't my money to spend completely autonomously at that age.
yeah.
Dad and mum still had a fair degree of say in terms of what I was and wasn't allowed to spend that money on. So
Make you
it would
earn
have
it,
been
or make you save it.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
But then, kind of moving out of the school years, my first job. So I left school. What's the equivalent? I was living in New Zealand at the time.
yeah,
So lived in New Zealand, moved from Sydney to Wellington when I was 10. And so it's the equivalent of year 11 is sort of when I finished school. So I didn't go to uni. I didn't sort of continue that path. From the trades, no one in my family's ever gone to uni. It was not worth doing the extra year to try and earn the right to go to uni because I'm never going to do it. And it was
yep.
time to start paying the bills. So I had done, I just turned 17. It was a couple of days after I turned 17 was my last day at school. And I had done work experience in a wholesale nursery doing horticulture during my final year. And I had one day off. And then I was actually on that day off that Cor Fenstra, the owner of the nursery, gave me a call and said, "You start tomorrow." And so I only managed to have one day off. I was hoping for a nice summer break, but one day off and straight into the nursery, and did that for 6 months before leaving the trades. And funnily enough, I haven't gone back. But the paychecks at the nursery were I think it was weekly on a Friday, and get a nice little envelope with
Oh
a
yeah.
it was all on the pay scale. So it was like a few notes and a few coins because it was all very precise. And so you get this envelope that rattles around with a few 50
I
cent pieces
remember
in
those
it.
days. Oddly.
So that was, I think, like the annual salary then would have been, and this is in 93, so like late 92, 93, early 93. That was about 12K a year was my
Yeah, yeah.
salary, my wage at the nursery. And then, and the reason I wanted to go into the nursery was I had the hard landscaping with the bricklaying, and I wanted to be a landscaper, and I'd done a little bit of landscape design. And so I went to work in a nursery to get the soft landscaping to then sort of be able to bring the pieces together. But
Yeah.
then I bailed on that whole idea. It got really cold, and I sort of lucked into a job at Westpac. So I went from being a bricky's labourer and a brickie and a horticulture guy to putting on the suit and going into the big smoke and working in a bank. So
And
that
was that in
was
NZ
when I
still,
was
or was that?
yeah. So I was still living in Wellington,
Yep.
and so I was 17 and managed to get a job in the back office. Well, it's the back office of the bank, but it was the front office part of that back office. So
Feeling the
I won't go
paycheck.
into all the details. If only. But now the paychecks were a bit bigger, not much bigger. I jumped up to $17,010 a year was my salary.
Wow.
So it was, a bit of a bump from 12K, but still the lowest paid job in the bank.
Yep.
And now the paycheck was put directly into my Westpac bank account because they make you open one, and and it comes fortnightly. So that was definitely a sort of a different mode, and a massive sort of turning point in my life, which was awesome.
And so did that give you the freedom to move out of home? Did you stay at home? Like where were you at with that sort of paycheck, and how did that allow you freedom, or whatever it did?
Yeah, lots more freedom. And I was living at the time in a suburb in Wellington called Wainuiomata, Wainui. People who know Welly, know NZ, will probably know that it's a pretty hardcore little place. And it's a suburb in Wellington, but it's completely separated from the rest of Wellington by a massive sort of hill, and sort of one road in, one road out type thing.
Yeah,
And
right.
so being able to, and it's about a 20,000 people population at the time, it's a bit smaller now. And so I'd then be getting the bus into town, and then you're in with, everyone else, and a very different dynamic working with, hundreds, thousands of people, as opposed to two or three people and whoever came down to the nursery.
Yeah.
So it was definitely opened up a whole world of possibilities and a whole new world. And that freedom and just a change of perspective was amazing, and definitely probably the single most life-changing moment that I've had throughout life, sort of having that exposure of different perspectives and everything else along those lines, and loved it. And so spent total of 5 years with Westpac from 93 to 98,
Yep.
3 different roles in that time. And then I moved to AMP and AMP banking. So 18 months with AMP, late 90s in Wellington, and then got a transfer back home to Sydney with AMP and worked for AMP banking for 18 months back here. And then I sort of did that on the condition to myself that I'd get to London. I'd spend 18 months back in Sydney and then get all my stuff back here, and then I'd move to London. So mid 2001, I moved to London and lived there for 7 years.
So
and
that's what
moved back.
that
Yep.
job gave you. Well, the job led to opening like a world of possibilities. Like, okay, wow, look at all
Absolutely.
the possible. And then
Yep.
with the desire. So what was the desire? Like, what was the desire for London? Like, did you know London? Did you know someone? Was there a girl there? What was it, or a boy, or what?
No, it was the thing was, so it was actually my second role at Westpac.
Yep.
And no one in my family has ever gone to uni, no one's traveled, and so none of that, and all the people I knew,
So
very
you
low
hadn't, at this
socioeconomic.
stage, you hadn't seen that. Like, you hadn't seen people
No, I
travel.
hadn't,
You hadn't seen sort
no,
of people working banks.
I knew it was something that people did, but
Yeah, yeah.
none
It
of
wasn't
my
modeled to
family
you,
or
was what
direct
I'm getting at.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't something I even knew was a possibility for me at that stage.
Wow.
And I love music. Music's my everything.
Yep.
And one day, so it's my second role, pretty early into it, and there's this in-flight magazine, an old Ansett flight magazine.
Wow.
On my desk, and I was just like, someone must have just left it there. One of the guys that was traveling a lot.
Yep.
And so I was flicking through it, and there was this article about the Montreux Jazz Festival and Oscar Peterson playing at the Montreux Jazz, and I was like, I just need to be there. I need to. And so this is what year was that? 95, early 95, and it's like I need to get there.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until 2001 that I actually did get there, and that was the deadline I set for myself at the end of 99, when I had the option of taking this transfer back to Sydney. It was either I go to Sydney, get all my stuff home, fully paid transfer with AP, or I move to London, which would mean at some point then I come back to Wellington. Yeah. And so made that call, and the timeline I put on myself was I'll be at Montreux Jazz, which is the first Friday of July in 2001. So I've got 18 months, I'll do my thing, and then I have to be at Montreux Jazz. And so then I went to Montreux Jazz and that was the main thing that took me to London, was so I could go to Montreux Jazz every year without having to try and get there from Sydney, which is a long way to go for 3 weeks.
So who introduced you to music then? Like, where did that come from?
Sort of grew up with music, as music lover, not musician. And dad's is definitely sort of, so my dad and my birth mum, they broke up when I was 1, and I went with my dad.
Yep.
And so then we lived at grandma and grandpa's in Lidcombe. So sort of Lidcombe and Chullora is where I grew up until I was 10. And so during dad's sort of single days, he'd take me to all the Spanish and jazz clubs when he was going out. So I'd be out bouncing around the clubs, into the music, having a bounce around. And when I got tired, I'd just go and find a table to go and sleep under. And, so syncopated rhythms, beats, jazz-driven stuff, that's my happy place. And that flows through into, trip hop and hip hop and acid jazz and drum and bass and deep house and all the music that I love and listen to constantly now.
Nice. I've been told that I used to fall asleep with my head against the speaker. I had a
Yeah.
little piano, and Elton John. I used to think I was Elton John. I just like
Bang it out.
touch his piano. Yeah, Saturday,
Awesome.
Saturday.
The Benny.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So definitely not a musician. I'm tone deaf, but I love music as well. Like it just,
Yeah.
I say that the ocean soothes my soul, and music
Yep.
ignites it.
Awesome. I love
Yeah,
it.
really
Completely
love
agree.
it.
Experience the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so with that work back AMP Sydney, living in Sydney,
Yep.
was it easier to save? Like what was that like what was the economy climate like in those days for you? Like was 18 months an easy time frame to save enough money to get? Because I know the airfares were expensive in those days.
The airfares were expensive, and the exchange rate to the sterling was 3.2 at the time. And so saving wasn't something that I had ever really done.
Yeah.
Even though by that point, by the time I left Sydney and Wellington, that was sort of 8 years of working for Westpac and AMP. So I'd been on, it got up to a decent sort of pay, nothing extravagant, none of these big banker bonuses type things, but a completely different world to what I grew up with. So relative to what I'd always had, I had loads, but I also knew I didn't need much because I'd never had much. So the idea of having this big financial buffer to then go and move to London didn't even really cross my mind. I had credit cards. I'm okay with debt.
Back in the day
And
when you
I
could walk in and get a credit card on the spot.
exactly. And I knew that I had a decent earning power, so I could sort of pay off that debt without it being anything too risky. So I had a little bit of savings, but not much. I probably spent most of that by the time I got back from Montreal and traveling around. So I was spending a decent amount of spending at 3.2 to the Aussie dollar because it was an Aussie credit card. So I racked up a decent credit card debt at that exchange rate. And by the time I was fully paying it off, the exchange rate had dropped down to about 2.3. So it was an expensive debt, but absolutely worth it.
So you never got
And
work over there?
well,
Because I
that's
earned
so
in
when I got
pounds.
there,
Once you're earning pounds, it doesn't matter.
yeah, once that's happening, you're normally golden. But I got there, so July, went away for 5 6 weeks for Montreux Jazz and bit of traveling around Switzerland, France. Then got back, started looking for a job, and the dot-com bust had already pretty much happened earlier that year. So we're in the bust time. The job UK London job market had already died earlier in the year, and then it's pretty much dead around that summer, tail end of summer anyway. So I spent a couple of weeks going, I looked for a job, sort of doing project management, strategy design, tech type stuff in banks, which is what I had been doing. There was just not even any being advertised, let alone being able to get them.
Yeah.
And so I then went, I'll do whatever. So went for some really hilarious job interviews, like being a porter in a Kensington hotel with no elevator. So it would have been lugging people's suitcases up and down the steps all day.
Like this is sliding doors. Like I worked as a porter in a hotel
No way.
in Kensington. In Kensington,
No way. I wonder if they gave the
I
job
was
to you
parking
instead.
Bentley in a car lift that just like it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare.
Well, that was the other one I was going to
Guard
say.
hotel.
Another one that I found hilarious was an architect firm as a car jockey, where it was just to move cars around when the different partners wanted to go out for their drive.
Yeah,
So I didn't take those ones, but I ended up getting a job at Bar 38, a cocktail bar in Covent Garden.
yeah,
So I got a bar job. I There's a whole other thread to this whole story, which is around sort of bodybuilding and mind body training and well-being. But I had my personal trainer quals, and so I got a job in a gym. Even though I'd never worked in the gym before, I'd trained lots of people since my teens, but I hadn't actually
yeah,
worked in the gym. And as part of that, I'd been doing a lot of Pilates. And so the Pilates Institute was just around the corner from the gym I was working at.
yeah,
And so I went to say, how do I get my Pilates quals? And they had a requirement that you had to be a fitness trainer for at least 2 years before you could even do the course to become qualified. And I said, I don't have that. I've only just started working in the gym, but I've been training people for over 10 years. and they asked me what I had been doing instead, and I mentioned all the design and tech stuff. And the guy said, "We've got a virus on our server. Can you sort that out?"
Let's go. Right place, right
And I
time.
said, exactly. So I went, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
And so basically that was when Dynamic 4 was born. So Players Institute was the first client on the strategy design tech side of things.
yeah.
And they were also my first fitness client. So back in 2001, there was Dynamic 4 technology and Dynamic 4 fitness, which is why there's a number 4 at the end of Dynamic.
Yeah.
It's really a shortcut for FOR.
Yeah.
And so that was the, rather than waiting for recruiters or the banks to come back into business and be ready to hire, I started my own business and got on with it. And Dynamic 4 still going almost 23 years later.
Yeah. So that's that ethos of what Dad taught you. You just get on with it. You just do what you can. Whatever's there, you work and you do it. So lovely, ethos that Dad
Yeah.
gave you. That's where our
And
sliding doors differ. I went and worked in a cafe in Amsterdam
right.
instead of starting my own business in London.
Yeah. Maybe a business of kind.
Yes.
So yeah, it was definitely, some of that ethos of, one, you get on and do it. There's always something to be done. Not his words, but I really like the quote of, "Don't let what you can't do stop you doing from what you can do." Like there's always a path forward. Momentum is powerful if you can just get moving and keep moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Then things happen. It might not be your ideal job, but a lot of that stuff doesn't happen in one step. So that progress and momentum being more important than thinking, "I'll just hold off until it's all perfect and then I'll do that next thing." And then the other, something else I really value out of how I was brought up was the really diverse and broad interests and sort of embracing and nurturing my curiosity. I've always done lots of everything.
Yep.
And that has then meant, and Dad was sort of keen on having sort of broad horizons and kind of being good at everything. So I had very much a sort of a generalist as a value, and it's almost expected that you're better than average at anything you try, and you've got to try, and you might not be there first go, but you keep going till you are. And so that's then means, throughout, been working now since over 31 years in a professional sense. And I've done lots of things in parallel, and my curiosity is sort of endless with that. But the main thing that I love doing is then being able to integrate all those pieces. So, that well-being stuff, which started with, bodybuilding when I was 12. There's lots of mind-body training in my mid-teens, through into Pilates, personal training, teaching spin, meditation, mindfulness as part of all of that. That well-being side then is completely embedded in all the work I do with corporate leaders and social enterprise leaders and everyone else around how do we actually look after and increase our well-being while we're doing all these things, and purpose is a key part of that. Regeneration is not just regeneration from a people and planet point of view, from external, but how do we regenerate ourselves and our own energy? So bringing all those pieces into one integrated practice. So all the pieces that I've loved and keep doing over the years, how do I bring all those things together as one integrated practice, rather than most people would sort of think of them and experience them as silos or verticals of you go do some innovation over there and you can go over this other side and do some purpose stuff maybe, or you go and look after your health and well-being on this other. How do you actually do it all at once? We don't get separate lives for work and play. That work-life balance is just one life. So we may as well work out how do we bring it together in a good, positive, creative way.
I think that's another point of connection for me with you, is when we met, just that awareness of like my mental health. Like I don't have mental health, I just have health. Like I can't take it off and make it separate, and it's a holistic approach. And working with your clients in how do we incorporate this, and how it creates better cultures and better workplace environments when you do that over and above. Oh, like I've got to go over here and do that because I can't. But no, you just bring it in. Like you incorporate.
Exactly. And we're always, everyone's busy to one degree or another. And if you have to go somewhere else and carve out some separate time to go do healthy stuff, then it's always the first thing that gets cut out. So, it's how do we embed it into our habits and workflow and just how we be and do everything, rather than now we need to go find a special time to go be healthy, because that's not how life works.
I would totally relate, because I was working and have worked and still do at times with men getting out of prison, and they're going to parole, and they might fall over and slip up, and parole has all these conditions on, and they're like, okay, what we're going to do is going to give you more to do. I was like, well, no, wait a minute, they can't cope with what they've already got, so we need to take that
create
away.
some space.
Like, unless you can easily incorporate things into your life and they complement it, that thing's always going to drop off if you're going outside to get it, or it's like it's the first thing that drops off, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
indeed. So
you've answered the question around sort of, and we're already running out of time.
Time flies, huh?
What you're doing now, what do you like? What brings you joy about that? Talking about that holistic approach, like what do you like about the work that you do now?
The biggest thing really is working with people, and being able to work with people, help them succeed and build capability and build some of these habits so they're actually happier, and happier not just sort of as a mood or a temporary state, but happier in terms of that resilience and those happiness habits that then the research shows actually that's the foundation of success. Not that we achieve something and then makes us happy. That all the research shows that actually when we do the things to build the habits and the practices around resilience and building our happiness habits, then we're 30% better at literally anything that we do. So success follows happiness, as opposed to how we tend to be conditioned that happiness follows success. So it's a 180 flip of that. And so really being able to work with people around that. And for me, and this goes all the way back to the bricky days, which probably does for you as well, it's not enough just to do the big picture and sort of dream up what this building or this landscape or something might look like. If it just stays at the vision, it's worthless. It doesn't really matter. It's how do we then do what's needed to make that idea real, and then that's being able to work through the layers of detail, collaborate with people to make that happen. And create again those conditions that help create happier communities. One through these types of environments, both physical and socially and culturally, but then also by actually doing things and that momentum and feeling achievements and having something to show for your work. There's so much positive sort of power to that. So doing it myself, never wanted to be all talk and just talk about this stuff. It's important to me that I've still got that current practice, and it's when I'm doing coaching and training, it's based on actual real practice, as opposed to just theoretical. But then not enough for me just to keep it and do it myself. I also want to share it with other people and help other people on their journeys as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't give something you haven't got and you don't do anyway. Like, you can sort of think you're teaching it, but you can't literally give something that you haven't got or not doing. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. No, and it tends to become theoretical, instructional, telling people about it.
It becomes that outside.
Most learning happens.
I'm going out there to get it, and I'm doing it out there. I'm not doing it and living it.
And the learning doesn't tend to stick when you're told. You need to experience it and practice that applied and that integrated again. So you need to feel it on your body and in your being to really embed the learning. It's not enough just to hear about it.
And so, okay, that said, where's the greatest friction at the moment?
The greatest friction is the joy of business, and that the realities, which it's the opposite of how I grew up, where being a craftsman and taking pride in your work, and it's about the quality of the product and the experience that you create with and for people. That's the value system that I've grown up with, and that's what I value. And that's where my heart is. But then cognitively, I know from a business perspective that unless you can also generate demand and people are willing to pay for that, then you don't get to do the craft and you don't get to do the product side. And so that sort of marketing and sales side of business even though I've been doing startups for over 30 years and I've been running Dynamic 4 for over 23. It's just not my natural habitat. So it's my biggest learning curve has been trying to learn how to do more of that sort of marketing and sales and build the demand side of the business. Because all of our business has always been word of mouth and through the network, which is awesome because it means people know, like, and trust us, and they're ready to refer. And it also means that the work then comes through very hot leads, but it's not, it doesn't have that predictable cycle to it. So trying to work out how to design, build, and launch that repeatable sales cycle. That's where the friction is, because it's not some of it butts up against my sort of value system. It's not my natural place. But it's also critical to success of business. So I'm trying to learn.
And how do you go about, do you feel trusting to outsource that to people? Like, one of the great lessons that my dad said to me is, like, mate, if there's an electrical problem, you get an electrician. If you're an electrician, but if you get an expert in the field. If you're not an expert and you can't sort of move forward with it, get the expert.
Definitely, and I think that's good advice. And then most experts need a certain level of readiness for them to be able to do their work. So most experts, they need wiring to be in place before they can go fix, if it's a spark, it's a faulty light bulb, and not light bulb, but a faulty switch, say, there needs to be existing wiring and some infrastructure there for them to work with. Most Sparkies would do more of that than, okay, let's do the architecture of what actually needs to be there, where are we going to run this cabling, and there's no building here, no trusses up for me to be able to wire this up yet, and you're not connected to mains power. So with all of these things, there's a level of readiness that's needed before you can able to put in some of those experts. And so 100% agree with the sentiment, but then in practice, often you need to have certain foundations, a certain level of readiness before those people can actually do their work and be successful.
Totally agree. We're coming to an end. It's gone so quickly. As with everybody, I could talk for days with people that
exactly.
So I know you've got a book, Dynamic 4. You've already spruiked and all that sort of stuff. Is there anything at the moment that B Corp stuff, whatever you want to, whatever you want to spruik? Here's an opportunity. Hopefully, people watch to the end to be able to listen to the spruik.
Exactly. As I said, sales and marketing, not my natural habitat, so nothing to spruik. But
there's a gap in the market there. Ben needs a sales and marketer if you want to, all the way to the end. I consistently get people trying to say, mate, your YouTube's really good, but I'm an expert in YouTube and I can do this. So if you watch this to the end, YouTube experts, call Ben.
Well played. But yeah, it's probably more always up for collaborating. Love doing the, pretty diverse set of interests, and especially around helping leaders then solve problems that matter, do that in more empathic and innovative ways, and help build that organizational culture to where you're making better decisions, you're collaborating better, and people are happier while they're doing good work. And then being able to bring that purpose and well-being as part of that, then that's my happy place, and always keen to collaborate. And dynamic4.com is the website. Find me there. I'm on LinkedIn.
Number 4 or FOUR?
Number 4. Number 4.
Number 4.com.
Number 4, the numeral 4.com.
It'll be in the bottom of the link somewhere.
There we go. Awesome.
As always, mate, it's a pleasure talking to you. I'm really grateful that I've met you. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world, as far as I'm concerned, as Barbara Streisand would say. So yeah, I really value your time, and thank you for giving me some. Omar, hopefully you're happy now.
Yeah, thanks, Omar.
And you, I believe. So yes, thank you, Omar. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Ben.
Thanks for having me, mate. Good to have a chat, and look forward to more soon.
Pleasure, mate.
Have fun.